Hello, everyone. We're going to wait a few more minutes for more people to join and for everything to be set up. Okay, welcome everyone, and hello. My name is Carlbertrand. I'm co-chair of the Westchester County Continuum of Care Partnership to End Homelessness. That's such a mouthful to say, we just call it the Continuum of Care or just the COC. And nearly every county in America has the COC because you can't get federal funding for the homeless unless you do. And our job is to try to bring together all the right people and all the available resources to figure out the best possible way to meet all of the needs for all of the homeless in the county. And that's obviously a tall order, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. The federal government recently announced that it's giving $12 million of new money for the homeless in Westchester County, and it's giving it to 4 local governments. And it has a complicated formula used to decide how much each one got. But what they wound up deciding was that the city of Yonkers would get 4.7 million, Westchester County would get 4 million, the city of Mount Vernon would get 1.8 million, and the city of New Rochelle would get 1.5 million. And that money will flow soon, but it can't flow till each of those 4 governments submit a written plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, explaining what they're going to do, who they're going to do it for, how long they're going to do it, and documenting that they have asked for public comment from dozens of different kinds of groups, veterans groups, homeless groups, domestic violence, people representing disabilities, homeless people themselves, public housing authorities, the COC, all sorts of different groups. And rather than have all 4 local governments ask the same questions to the same people 4 separate times, what we're doing is we brought everybody here together. So if you speak here today, you're speaking to Pam, Alba, Christy, and Sylvia, the people who are running all 4 programs and who will be putting together the plans for how their local money should be spent. So this is your chance to have input into that process. The specific pot of money is coming from HUD. It's going into the 4 jurisdictions' home programs, but it's a special set of home money that comes from a federal budget stimulus package called the American Rescue Plan, or ARP. So what the money that we're talking about today is called Home-ARP, or Home ARP. So it's $12 million coming to these 4 local governments into their home pots, but that has to follow special Home ARP rules. So you'll hear Home ARP as discussed all through the meeting today. Now, the 3 things that we need your input on is what they should do with the money, who they should serve with the money, and how long they should stretch the money. The $12 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but you can't do everything for everybody with that. You couldn't do like permanent housing for thousands of people, but you could make each of the 4 jurisdictions could make a real difference in the lives of dozens or hundreds of homeless people if they decide to spend it the right ways. And that's what we're asking you for your input on today. So the first question is, what should they do? And they have a lot of flexibility. The 4 eligible things they could do with the money. One is they could create or preserve affordable housing. Now that usually costs millions, but if there's some money that's needed like upfront to make it possible to put together one of those multi-billion-dollar packages, that's the kind of thing that this home art money could do. Or there may be other specific needs where that would make a difference. The second possibility is what's called non-congregate shelter, because many traditional homeless shelters, particularly for single individuals, everybody gets squeezed into a relatively small space. They share bedrooms, they share a common living area, and it's hard in the COVID epidemic to socially distance when you're in that kind of setting. So what some communities have done is they've, like, for instance, rented motel rooms so that each person has their own motel room and they can stay separate from each other. So that's the second option. They could choose to use that model that's called non-congregate shelter. The third thing is very basic. Everybody who's homeless is usually homeless because they can't afford the rents. So this home art money could be used to help provide rent subsidies like Section 8. And it couldn't do that for everybody, but it could do it for some. And the question they would need to decide is who needs it most. And then the fourth thing that they can do with this money is they can provide homeless services. The technical description is they could provide any service that's eligible for a HUD Continuum of Care for the Homeless grant, or a HUD Emergency Solutions grant, or a HUD Housing Counseling grant. But in non-technical terms, you can ignore all that, because pretty much anything you could think of that any type of homeless person might need is probably an eligible service. And they can combine things. They could do rent subsidies and one or two or three kinds of services for a specific population, and that could be their plan. It's all in where they decide the gaps are, where they can make the best use of their money. So the second question is what kind of homeless people will they serve? So they could serve young people or old people. They could serve people with a particular disability or people with no disability at all who just can't afford housing. They could do veterans or people fleeing domestic violence, people with a specific kind of medical need. They could decide to focus on homeless people who are in shelters or living on the streets or in cars or abandoned buildings. They could decide that people who were doubled up with friends and family and overcrowded, that would be the population they would serve. There'd be some people who bounce around a few weeks at a time with different people. It's called couch surfing. They could decide to focus on those. They can decide on any combination, but before they can get the money, they need to tell HUD, this is what we're going to do, and these are the people that we're going to consider eligible, that we're going to target with our local dollars. And then the third thing they need to decide is how long they're going to stretch the money. So they could spend their whole allocation this year and serve more people for a shorter period of time. Or they could stretch it all the way out to September in the year 2030 and serve fewer people for anything up to 8 years, or any combination from here to there. So that's the third question. It's what should they do, who should they do it for, and how far should they stretch it? And that's what we're hoping that you can give some input in today. Whatever thoughts or specific areas that you would like to recommend they focus on, you'll speak to all four. Now, what we're going to do with the information today is we're helping them collect the evidence that they need to submit in their applications to HUD. So one thing we'll do is we'll have a videotape of this whole presentation and everything that's said today, and we'll put a link to the videotape in their federal applications. YouTube will make a transcription of everything that's said. That won't be perfect because it's done by computer, but it'll be close. So we'll send them the transcript. We'll send them a list of everyone who speaks and everyone who came, and of all the different kinds of groups who were represented. And We have a email address on your screen, homearp@programdesign.com. And up to January 26th, you can send written comments. You can send us a copy of what you say today. You could send us a study, an article, statistics, whatever you think will help persuade them to meet the need you'd like them to meet. And our COC will help them put all that information together, and all four will include that in their applications to HUD that will make it possible for them to bring this money to Westchester. And so that's an overview of what we're here to discuss today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my charming and powerful associate, Allison McAllister, who will act as the MC from here and take us through the rest of the public forum.
Hi all, I think Carl pretty much covered everything. We are simulcasting this session to YouTube, so it will be available there as a recording. If you know folks you wish were here and you would like to share it with them, they too would be able to share their input via the email address provided. The email address is great if you don't like public speaking. If you're like me and you think of the perfect thing to say, a moment has already passed, and other circumstances. So please feel free to utilize that, and it will automatically go to the planning team that you see here on your screen, who will be handling the recommendations to HUD. I would just ask that everyone will be better able to get a chance to speak if we keep ourselves concise and under 3 minutes. And if you use the chat that you have when you have questions, rather than if you'd like to be a speaker. So how do you start speaking? I was asked this. Couple of different ways. You can raise your hand using the icon. You can put it in the chat that you'd like to be next. Or you can just, if there's a little gap and we're looking for someone to talk, that someone is you. So that would be the perfect opportunity to chime in. So we are going to start with Ms. Pons. If you would like to start us off, and then Melinda Bellis from Legal Services of the Hudson Valley will be next.
Hi, everyone. This is my first time here, so I apologize if I don't know all the parameters on presenting, but my name is Lucia Pons. I'm the Executive Director of the Lower West Side Household Services. We're a licensed home care agency. We've been in business since 1969. We originally started in the Lower West Side of New York City, assisting seniors actually figure out how to access social services through the Human Resources Administration, dealing with tenant landlord situations. And that grew to providing services into Westchester County for home care and assisting seniors with all of their care and social needs. One of the biggest issues that was actually amplified in the 2018 report from the county, and as we see with the pandemic, is obviously the increased number of individuals who are not only in a facility or an institution, particularly in nursing homes, that want to be placed in affordable homes back in the community. And our organization is definitely interested in partnering with the county to see how we could assist in those home placements or assist with individuals who are in the community and don't have the means to remain there safely, and to provide those supportive services for them through whether it's Medicaid waiver services or other funding. Our niche and our partners actually have been Westchester County Department of Social Services. We work with the Department of Health with individuals with special needs, as well as other organizations in Westchester County, and would love to support those individuals who are residing in the county and want to remain in the county through affordable home and supportive services.
Thank you. Melinda Bellis?
Thank you. I'm sorry I was muted. My name's Melinda Bellis, and I'm the attorney in charge of the Yonkers office at Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, or LSHV. LSHV is the only provider in the Hudson Valley of free comprehensive legal services and civil matters for individuals and families who cannot afford an attorney when the basic human needs are at stake. We have 4 offices in Westchester County located in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, White Plains, and Peekskill. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this open forum. I'd like to advocate that a portion of the funds designated for housing in our communities be directed towards homeless prevention services and tenant-based rental assistance. Homeless prevention services must include legal representation to tenants facing evictions. Evictions from rental housing in Westchester County are a county-wide epidemic, which has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2019, there were 9,344 eviction petitions filed in the county city courts. Yonkers and Mount Vernon accounted for over 7,000 of these petitions. Despite court closures, numerous moratoria, and the legislation directed at curtailing evictions and filings throughout New York State in 2020 and 2021, filings persisted. In 2020, there were 4,295 eviction petitions filed in Westchester County, and the majority of those filings were in the city of Mount Vernon and Yonkers. In 2021, there were 3,143 new eviction proceedings filed in Westchester County, and that's the highest number outside of New York City. Surely, as we look towards the ends of this week, when New York's current eviction protections expire, there'll be a flood of filings. Eviction is not solely an issue of rental arrears. It's about a gross inequity in power between landlords and tenants, which can have catastrophic results for low-income families. Unrepresented tenants unknowingly sign agreements that result in their families becoming homeless, and this can sometimes happen in less than 2 minutes in court. Without representation, payment of rental arrears occurs with no oversight and verification. We have seen and will continue to see an influx of families that are facing eviction for the first time, and we will be unable to navigate the court system or access eviction prevention services. It is essential for there to be funding for legal assistance to ensure that these families are represented and guided through the process and resource of eviction prevention. Tenant-based rental assistance is also essential to stabilize families that have lost income during the pandemic or cannot afford the high cost of renting in Westchester County. With the expiration of the moratorium just days away, the need for funding legal representation to tenants who are facing evictions has never been greater. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Angela Farish, followed by Anitra Guzman Santana.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Angela Farish, and I do have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the New Rochelle Housing Authority here in our beautiful city of New Rochelle. I happen to serve the most vulnerable population here within the city. Currently, I have 100 residents living in public housing that is significantly behind on their rent. And I am hopeful and I'm advocating that some of these funds be set aside for those residents, because for those who don't know and for those who do, New Rochelle has seen a significant amount of development in luxury housing. And it is going to be extremely prudent for our city to make sure that those who live in low-income housing, specifically public housing, that we don't see a huge exodus because of the expiration of the moratorium, which is January 15th. I am a strong advocate of public housing. I am a proud product of public housing. So again, I am sounding the alarms that it's, we want to really prevent the residents who live in public housing for not ending up in homeless shelters. So if these funds can be utilized, and I believe New Rochelle got 1.5 million, that some of those funds can be set aside to help the families that I serve on a daily basis. That is my comment.
Thank you. Anitra Guzman Santana.
Good afternoon. I'm Anitra Guzman Santana with Family Service Society of Yonkers, or FISSY, as I call us often. Across the United States, more than 2.65 million children live in kinship families, families in which grandparents, adult family members, or close family friends are raising children without parents in the home. These families frequently come together at a moment's notice, often with a call in the middle of the night from a parent, the police, child welfare, telling them they must pick up the children or the children will end up in foster care with strangers. For most caregivers, the commitment is long and stable housing is critical. Over 60% of grandparents responsible for grandchildren have raised them for at least 3 years, with 45% doing so for over five or over. Nationwide, almost half of very low income renting grandparent-headed households spent more than 50% of their income on rent. Yet less than 1/3 of eligible kinship families receive housing assistance. Kinship families are among the most vulnerable in Westchester, especially after recent social service funding cuts and the impact of the pandemic. There are 7,500 kinship families in Westchester, including 5,000 grandparents as caregivers. More than half are over age 60 and nearly 70% are female. Most are low income and 92% do not receive the benefits to which they are entitled. Their numbers are growing, especially in immigrant communities, and are expected to increase further due to the pandemic. 82% of the kinship families served by FISSY's Kinship Support Program have very low or low incomes. In Yonkers, where the largest number of kinship families reside, 91% of the families we serve are very low or low income. Many families are on the brink of eviction or have rent arrears. In July and August of 2021 alone, we counseled and assisted 17 families with applying for ERAP so they can remain in their homes. During the last 7 years, 50 families have come to the support program for assistance with finding affordable housing or eviction prevention. An additional 15 families requested assistance with inadequate conditions in their apartments. 10 more families requested advocacy with applying for Section 8. Due to the lack of affordable housing in Westchester, we have not been able to resolve all of the housing issues that were presented to us. The new allocation of home ARP funding offers a unique opportunity to provide targeted multi-year rent subsidies and housing case management to this small but often overlooked and vitally important group of kinship caregivers. Helping these kinship families achieve safe, stable housing will benefit our communities by preventing homelessness and needless child welfare placements. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I just want to remind folks who are sharing a lot of great data and information that it would be super helpful if you could email that to us after the meeting so that everyone has it for their plans.
The written comments that you submit will become part of the official record that we include in our plans to HUD. So we strongly encourage you to submit written comments.
Yes. All right, who would like to be next? You can raise your hand or just start talking.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Rivera. I don't have any statistics, but I've worked with the Crisis Stabilization Team with People USA and now working with Department of Community Mental Health with Children's Services. I've seen a need in transition age housing. There's often a lot of referrals that I received that were involved in the criminal justice system because they had order of protections and were no longer allowed to return to their homes, Often they were males, and those order protections were against their mothers. And the transition age of youth are reluctant or have a very hard time going into the adult homeless shelters, and it's not a very safe or pleasant experience for them, and they don't feel supported and guided the way that they should be. As well as I do want to advocate for housing options for the LGBTQ plus transition age population, because they tend to have a lot of issues with family dynamics in regards to their identity, which creates very unsafe, unsupportive, unhealthy relationships in the home. And they get involved either in the criminal justice system or end up in hospitals, in hospitalizations. So I do want to advocate for the transition age population. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next, we have Dr. Bennett Conroy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Bennett Conroy from the Mount Vernon City School District. And I would like to advocate on behalf of our students. We have a very high population of homeless students in our district. And I would really like to advocate for, consistent housing in Mount Vernon, because we have discovered, and as the statistic shows, that the kids who are, a lot of them are not doing very well because they're moving around from place to place. And then you might find that some of them travel all the way from Brooklyn and from all over. And by the time they get to school, they are very tired because they don't have, a consistent place in Mount Vernon to stay, because they have been evicted or they have to move because of some other reasons. So I really, really would like to, for us to give consideration to the folks in Mount Vernon as well, because it affects our schools and it affects our students and it affects our parents as well. So I'm truly, truly advocating on behalf of the students, homeless students in Mount Vernon City School District.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maria Samuels.
Hi, Maria Samuels. I'm the Executive Director of Westchester Disabled on the Move. And I'm so happy that we're having this forum so we can bring forward all our concerns. Basically, we have been around for 38 years, serving people with disabilities in our county, including the 3 towns and cities that are here represented. But our main concern when it comes to housing is not just affordability, but also accessibility. And that's really one of our things that I really want to highlight in today's meeting. We have approximately 85,000 people with disabilities in our county. Most of them are low income, and most of them cannot afford the kind of rent that Westchester County demands. So we do try to help them with them. We have a housing advocacy program that works with that. Unfortunately, like most other programs that address affordability, it's underfunded. So I would like to include that in our proposal that we're doing. And we have the expertise to do that. We work with other organizations. It's not a one-person show. We do collaborate with other organizations. One of them is MHACY, where we have an agreement to help place people who are on the verge of going into institutions because they have no other place to go. We're very concerned about those people who are in nursing homes that can do very well on the outside of the community. Not only do we provide access to home care, we also help to provide payment of rent. We have a program called OHS, Homestead Housing Subsidy, that pays 2/3 of the rent. For people, we can get out of nursing homes. And as we all know, nursing homes did not fare too well during the height of the pandemic. They did horribly. So there's a huge demand on that. And if we can get more assistance in helping those people, who are not only people who are seniors, there's a lot of young people who also need that assistance. We also provide a lot of other long-term assistance for other issues. And one of them is also access to employment. Thank you for Access VR. We collaborate very strongly with them. They're one of our best partners. But we have other community-based organizations that are also partnered with to provide services to people with disabilities. But if we're going to focus on housing in Westchester County, I would like us to really remember affordability, yes, but accessibility, please. Remember, there are people, if you make it affordable and they come up to the place with a wheelchair, they still can't get in, what's the point? So there are needs for people who have sensory disabilities and mobility disabilities that need to be addressed in our county, as well as long-term assistance, not just short-term, but long-term assistance to keep them in the community so they can remain and become viable members and serve, do what they need to do, get employment, vote, go to restaurants, spend money, just like everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, the floor is open for the next speaker. You're all being super orderly and cooperative, so appreciate it.
This is Carl. I have a suggestion. I was waiting to give everyone else opportunity, but
Actually, Carl,
yes.
Mr. Ken Jenkins is joining us and would like to say a word.
Well, I will definitely yield to the Honorable Ken Jenkins. So Ken, would you like to say a few words to the group?
So did somebody let you know he was on, Allison?
I can see him.
Oh, okay. That's a good sign.
Oh, I think we just lost. I think Zoom just lost him. Well, when he
He'll
comes
get back
and puts his hand back up, we will welcome him to speak again.
Thank you.
I'm actually right here. Good afternoon.
Oh, good.
Right.
Here you are.
And I apologize, Carl. I was coming in. I just heard, and would Ken like to speak? I was like, well, okay. So apologies for the video that should be coming in right now. So this is an outstanding opportunity. We're really happy to participate with everyone in the communities of conscience to try to continue all of the outstanding work in dealing with the various myriad of issues as the challenges that are happening as it relates to homelessness and the ways that we all that are gathered here this afternoon can work together to try to address these things, considering whether it's the January 15th moratorium deadline, whether it's extended or not. We know that we have a continued problem. We had this problem prior to the pandemic, and now that we're going to continue to put all the resources that we have working with everyone together to make this happen. And I know between our colleagues here with Blanca Lopez and all of our departments that are participating today, that we are four square behind all of the efforts in trying to make sure to address the issues in every corner. It's not just one specific component that we need to deal with, maybe from a shelter perspective, but for long-term permanent housing. And the county executive and County Executive Latimer's administration is fully committed to addressing that with the amount of money that we have put in for for development of fair and affordable housing, specifically at the levels that are 50% of area median income and below that. So we're looking forward to continuing this work. We know that it is the continuance of a process. And again, thank you all for taking the time this afternoon to be part of this extremely important conversation. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. We're glad you could join us.
Our next speaker is Annette Peters.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'll be quick. I'll start my video also. I just wanted to put a plug in for some type of hoarding intervention program. We at the COC have a few items that, you know, over the years we say, oh, we wish we had some funding to do something like this. And in terms of, I came across the phrase tenancy preservation as opposed to eviction prevention, because we want to preserve tenants in their homes, of looking at some kind of project where, you know, in a couple of years ago, I can't imagine that it was June 2019, but it was. I thought it was way longer ago than that. But in June 2019, we had a wonderful presentation with about 130 people, some of you who are on this call now, to learn about a hoarding intervention project and how we could possibly bring something like that to Westchester. And yes, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, but we think that it may be well worth it. And it's one of those things where everyone says, oh, this would be great if, and this may be our if, and I really would not like to lose an opportunity that we may have to develop a pilot project with some of these funds to target that population.
And now
Thanks,
I see, Allison, I see that Dr. Toshi Francis from the Bronx VA has been trying to raise her hand. So if you
Yes,
could call her.
I got it.
Great.
Our next speaker is Courtney Bartosh.
Hello, everybody. I will be super quick as well. My name is Courtney Bartosh. I am a community school coordinator at the Park Avenue School in the Portchester Rye Union Free School District. I'm very super happy to be here just to kind of get some additional information on, you know, some of the different organizations in the area, as I am new to the district, as well as kind of sharing my experiences thus far, you know, since I've been here, similar to what one of the presenters had stated before in regards to the Mount Vernon School District. I couldn't agree more in regards to, you know, how overall, if there is unsafe housing or unstable housing, how that does affect our students here directly. You know, having parents that are just working around the clock to try and afford really expensive rent, or, you know, having to double up and, you know, in regards to unsafe housing, staying with, you know, either family members or acquaintances that, you know, there isn't really a great rapport, or, you know, really safety becomes a #1 issue, you know, for us, you know, here from the education perspective, but as well as, you know, just overall for our community perspective. You know, so I definitely would like to allocate, or, you know, to speak to the allocation of funds for, you know, our families, for just having, you know, rental assistance to really help with, you know, providing safe and stable housing, you know, that is not only affordable, but that really is, you know, a warm and welcoming place to stay. I saw in the chat that, you know, an individual had wrote, you know, for $1,500, it's almost impossible to find even a 1-bedroom apartment here in the county. So, you know, that definitely does speak to, you know, many of our students and their families and their struggles, and, you know, newcomers to the country as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marianne Watkins.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I had to unmute. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the population that I serve and individuals that I work with. So I'm coming from two avenues today. One is I work for Westchester Disabled on the Move, and I am the housing advocate for Westchester Disabled on the Move. And I'm also a community leader and a clergy leader in the city of Yonkers. So I work with all walks of life, and I concur with everything that has been said thus far. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity to present. One of the areas that I would like to see considered is affordable, accessible housing for individuals with disabilities. Most of the clients that I serve, their income does not exceed $1,000 a month. So what's considered affordable in Westchester County is really not affordable for individuals that have disabilities. So I would like to definitely see money allocated for that. I get an excess of 15 to 20 referrals a day of individuals with disabilities that are without housing, in need of accessible, affordable housing. I have clients now that are sleeping in their cars because they have no place to go. So I would really like to see some funds allocated to that, as well as to homelessness prevention and the homeless population. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I really hope that we can go further with this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter Ritz, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Walt Ritz. I'm the Executive Director for Hope Community Services. Hope really has two different avenues that we work in with housing. One is we work within the continuum of care with 2 housing programs, but we also serve in New Rochelle, specifically with a day program for the homeless community. And I actually want to echo what Marianne Watkins just said. There's been a lot of discussion about affordability, and that is certainly a real issue that needs consideration. But I want to make sure that we're also giving consideration for homeless services that are going to be there to help someone transition out of homelessness and into these apartments, whether that's support services, transitional services, or just structure and job placement services to make this happen. We work right across from a shelter here in New Rochelle, and we know that there are long-term homeless people that have a hard time and need these services to make that transition. So I want to put this plug in for those services, and I also want to put a plug in for the non-congregate shelter. During COVID, I think that was a major component for certainly the shelter here in New Rochelle to be able to deal with people that were testing positive, but also for overflow. So that is what I would like to see.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Toshi Francis.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Toshi Francis, Dr. Francis. I'm over at the Bronx VA. So I'm going to be speaking more so pertaining to like our veterans. So a lot of our veterans in the Westchester area, what I've noticed, because I work in homeless services under HUD-VASH and under the HCHV program. So a lot of our veterans that we are facing, they're disabled. Some of them may be in a nursing home. They need to be discharged back to a home. They cannot get discharged back to a home because of their disability. Or sometimes what we faced is we have like Safe Haven program, our Colonial House that's in the harbor. A lot of those veterans, they're not able to transition from Colonial House into a permanent housing because of the fact that they can't find affordable housing because of the fact they're disabled. So those are like some of the challenges that we're facing right now. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing is that we have some vets who may be in Westchester, like some of you guys have said on the call, they're sleeping in their cars. They're disabled, they're dealing with PTSD, or they're dealing with some form of mental illness, and they can't transition into the shelter because the shelter might remind them of the barracks and some of the traumas that they may have experienced. So a lot of times they end up having to stay in their cars until they can be able to transition, or we can assist them to transition into some form of shelter placement. So one of our biggest issues is that we'll have these veterans, some of them are seniors, and we're seeing more and more seniors who are not able to go into like our safe haven, and they have to stay with a family member, and we're trying to work with HUD-VASH to try to get them housed. So we're hoping that some of this funding can be able to assist those veterans, our senior veterans, and those veterans who are dealing with the mental illness and not able to go into the shelter system.
Thank you. And
You're
I just wanted to add, if anyone's aware of people who are sleeping outside, who are unsheltered, they're either outdoors in a vehicle or in a building that's not intended for human habitation, if you email that home ARP at program design email address, I will work with you to help get that person connected to a homeless outreach worker. We are having our hit count event where we count, but also do outreach for everyone who's unsheltered in the county on January 26th and January 27th. So we want to make sure that we're accurately capturing all the locations where people are sleeping out. And at the same time, we don't want to wait until then in order to connect people to outreach, because similar to today, where the high is only 19 degrees, they're in physical danger, and we want to help them get out of dangerous situation as soon as we can. Our next speaker will be Carlbertrand. 3 minutes.
Thank you. There is a unique need that nothing is met before that could be met with this, and that is for self-sufficiency services and rent subsidies that last more than 2 years. Because the main thing the COC does is it gives long-term housing subsidies that never require you to become self-sufficient. And then we have a category called rapid rehousing that gives you subsidies, but only for 24 months, and you need to be able to afford Westchester rents on your own after 24 months. If you're 18 years old and aging out of foster care, that is a long road to try to travel in 24 months. And there are other groups as well who need longer to accumulate the education, experience, and job training to be able to afford their housing and go from homelessness to self-sufficiency. And we haven't had any way to maintain someone in rent and provide those longer term services until Home ARP. So you now have the ability to put those two pieces together and meet the needs of people who need a longer time, particularly young adults. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. I have to give him a hard time. He's my boss. Who would like to be the next speaker? Oh, Michelle T. Logan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I live in Westchester County, obviously. I am a survivor. And thank God I was blessed with affordable housing here in Westchester County. And I just graduated from the Launch 1000 program, and I just opened up a nonprofit to provide transitional housing for domestic abuse survivors. I would like to eventually, prayerfully, I don't know how this is really happening, but obtain a building and work with my sister's place or any other shelter and provide transitional housing for survivors, but also with the continuum of care, just everyone working together. That's my goal, that everybody works together. If it's a building that is partially for transitional housing, but then partially maybe for children that have aged out of being in foster care, whatever, I think that would be great. Thank you so much. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to be next? I think we've demonstrated we're not too scary.
One, there's $12 million waiting for your ideas. You don't get that chance often.
It's very true.
You can see my hand.
Yes, ma'am, we can see you.
Okay, I'm Ann Spindell, and I am on the New Rochelle Campership Board, and I am also on the New Rochelle Network. My questions have to do with what sort of services we're going to provide and what sort of funding is available for services for the homeless people. Nobody has talked to that. And my other question is, what is the role that religious institutions are playing in supporting the homeless population? Thank you.
Thank you. Kind of in recording input mode right now, so I'm not sure who would like to respond to that. Carl, you're probably in the best position to respond to that.
Yes, there's tens of millions of dollars of services being provided annually by hundreds of people and dozens of agencies for thousands of homeless people. And it takes many forms, but it doesn't do everything that everybody needs. And rather than try to inventory the huge amount of what's done, we're hoping today to identify the gaps that need to be met. Like if there's someone that a group is able to get 4 services, but it needs 2 more, we want to hear about the 2 that are missing. Or if it's available for 6 months, but we need it for an extra year, we want to hear about that gap. We're really trying to focus now on identifying specific gaps that the 4 women representing the 4 local governments can invest their money in meeting. So that's what we're hoping we can find. Religious groups have had a long history of involvement, especially in the early days, making, my favorite story was when the cities were closing shelters, churches would have a shelter in a different church every night, and they couldn't close it because they couldn't keep up with it and find it fast enough. And it was like civil disobedience to make sure people didn't have to stay in the snow. But again, we're focused on what are the specific steps we can do with this $12 million now. So if churches wanted to play a role, come up with an idea or a niche that they would like, and the door is open to everyone to come up with their ideas now.
Hello, everyone. This is Jaquetta Jenkins. I'm from First Steps to Heal. I'm the executive director here, and we provide emergency shelter to domestic violence survivors that have minor children and who live here in Westchester County. Our funding allows us to provide housing via extended hotel stays, anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. But the problem that we're facing is when our survivors are transitioning out of our shelter and looking for a permanent dwelling, it's really hard for them to obtain housing that they can afford. So we would like to ask for additional funds to be able to extend their hotel stays, or, we also help them in obtaining Section 8. If there could just be some kind of cushion there for them to stay in the shelter a little longer, or to help them cover the cost that's associated with them finding their own permanent residency, that would be helpful.
A quick suggestion, Jaquetta, is it would probably be cheaper to use the money to do the first month's rent and security deposit and moving costs and things like that to help them transition to housing if they could afford it, rather than continue the stay in the shelter. But it's open for you to ask for what you want, but that might be a more appealing request, is to help people make that transition into housing if they had a way to sustain it. But it's a wonderful thing you're doing, and good luck with it.
And we're in listening mode today. I'll remind everyone, especially Carl. And Ms. Jenkins, you and I can talk about that. Also how you can make those connections to get what you need with what's existing where we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who would like to be the next speaker to share their ideas?
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Bailey, Executive Director of Bailey Initiative and also Deputy Director at Yonkers Community Action Program. Something that I was looking at under Bailey Initiative, we provide educational resources and tools and financial assistance for those that are looking to be a homeowner. And in just my conversations, noticing that there are some over income individuals in a lot of public housing that can potentially actually alleviate that housing and, you know, move over into a homeowner for some support. So what we do is provide that education and financial tools and resources to assist them. And maybe that can be an option for municipalities to look at those that are over income and are in their public housing that can, you know, potentially graduate to home ownership. And then that would allow space now for persons that are displaced or transitioning to then move up and receive those services. So if funding can be provided to institutions to provide that education, as also resources for them for persons to move forward and, you know, and graduate into home ownership, that can, you know, be an initiative or something that can allow additional space for affordable housing.
Thank you.
Allison, can I quickly piggyback off of that? And thank you, Anthony, for bringing up that point, because I do have residents who could afford to live out in the private sector. And the idea of having funding available to help those residents with home ownership would free up my units to house those who really need those affordable units. So Anthony, thank you for that point. And I did send you my contact information, so please reach out to me.
Will do, and doing it right now.
That's great. I think in terms of how these ideas get translated to action, they're going to be echoing in everybody's heads, but you may spark ideas and then people reach out to you and try to get more information. It might be the local governments reaching out, it might be a community partner, but this doesn't have to be your last input. Hopefully you'll spark those kind of discussions that can get closer and closer to being written into a grant application in 45 days. And that's ultimately the goal of what we hope to see.
Every online event is a networking event if you use the private chat.
And get people's emails so you follow up afterwards.
That's right. All right, who would like to be the next speaker? There's no queue at present, so you can just begin whenever the spirit moves you.
I have a thought. How about assistance for the undocumented population that is street homeless, and or either street homeless or uses the drop-in shelter? I was working with a lady for a long time that was undocumented, and it's very difficult. She's would be great in an apartment and would be able to upkeep it and everything. I just need that opportunity. I think a lot of undocumented people are in that situation.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? I see Mayor Patterson Howard has joined us.
So I just had an interesting issue last week. We had a woman who was couch surfing with family, but she became COVID positive and was living with family with vulnerable health conditions, and they put her on the streets. She went to DSS, and DSS said they had nowhere to put her because she was COVID positive. She went to the guidance center. Of course, they couldn't do anything immediately with her. And so, you know, in the first early wave of COVID, we were working with some hotels or with some colleges and place where we could find temporary domicile to house people. Is that still available? And do we want to use a small portion of the funding for those cases? Because there are some people who, I don't know if that doesn't meet the right definition of homeless, but if you're not sick enough to go into the hospital, if you can't stay in your house, and since these are, you know, home monies that have been given to us really to kind of address some of this COVID challenges, that's something that we have to consider.
That's a wonderful idea. They actually had a QHAB to do that early in the epidemic, and then the numbers went away and it closed, but then the numbers started spiking. And I heard, I think, that a new QHAB was supposed to open like in the last day or two or the next day or two, but it may not be enough.
It opened on Friday.
Okay, but it may not be enough because places are reporting that with Omicron, there's been spikes of 60%, 100%, 1,000%, 4,000% in a week. And so it may be that a program can't be started fast enough for that kind of spike. So you could use money that just paid for motels and meal delivery.
I mean, we have over 5,000 cases in Mount Vernon of active infection. Yonkers has over probably 11,000 cases of active infection. And, you know, I've been a social worker for a long time. I'm mayor now, but I was a COBRA, you know, case manager, COBRA build case manager. And so I didn't just call the office. I spoke to Leonard Towns. I spoke to Mr. Velasquez. I got all the way to the top of the food chain, and still there was no assistance. And so if I'm dealing with the leadership of DSS and we can't house someone who is actively ill but not sick enough to get into the hospital, I contacted the vice president of the hospital, and they were going to try and do, you know, kind of a mercy admission because she didn't meet the legal level if they knew they could get her housed the next day. But, you know, even that didn't work. And so literally, we were able to get someone, a church, to put her up in a hotel for 3 days. And that's the way that it was addressed. But the system itself had no answer.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful idea. You could either plan a program for a large number that lasted for a while, or you could have a sort of individualized solution where there was money for individual motel placements, meal delivery, and visiting nurse services, where there might be nothing for a week and then 6 suddenly the next week. So depends on the scale you want to budget for, but it could be either one, a kind of one-off individualized response or a more systemic, larger sustained response. But either one's an optional and eligible use of the money.
Visiting nurses, if a person was to that level of, you know, infection and active disease, then they might really be eligible for a hospital as opposed to, you know, the symptoms of this are generally milder. I just want to make sure that our money goes further. And I want to be careful of just, you know, building in a general visiting nurse when it could be a person who's kind of asymptomatic. So, you know, we don't want to look at that at per unit per capita, like it's something that goes automatically with a hotel stay. because
Yeah.
then we'll blow through that money.
That all makes sense. But whatever you want would be possible. It's just, it's trying to come up with a solution that fits your need in a world where the need is changing dramatically from week to week and month to month. But you could conceivably, though this may take you a month or 2 or 3 before you can do the plan and get the money to meet the need. So you may have to be planning out beyond the next couple of weeks. But it's all possible.
And keep something that's fluid, because we're going to see the rise, the fall, the rise and fall. If you look at your numbers, we track our numbers daily, and you can see that they are cyclical and seasonal, peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys.
And so the wonderful thing about this small pot of money is you could make it flexible and individualized rather than systematized and for a general population. You could try to leave flexibility to do what was needed day by day, week by week, person by person. I'm not sure how you write it, but there's probably a way to do that.
And ESGCV funds can be used towards this as well. So that might be a conversation we have with the county.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I'm now going to have to say goodbye pick up my wife from medical procedure. Thank you all. This has been phenomenal.
Blessings, Carl.
Okay, bye-bye.
I wanted to speak for a moment just as a social worker and a citizen, rather than as a COC person. I think one of the big misunderstandings having the inside scoop about homelessness is a lot of what we do is beholden to the HUD definition of homelessness, which means you're in a shelter, you're on the street, you're in a vehicle, or you're in a place unfit for human habitation. And that's not the only definition of homelessness. We also have the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness, which is much closer to what a lot of us see working in school districts, local governments, and other areas where you have a person or a family who are unstably housed. They don't have a reliable place to go every night where they can expect to stay. They're doubled up with other families, or they're temporarily dislocated from their regular place to stay. So I think if we have this opportunity to move forward on behalf of people who are unstably housed, that would be very beneficial. Another huge gap that we have are people who are undocumented. If there's any way we could begin to address and knit together the few resources that we have for people who don't have documentation of citizenship, but are experiencing homelessness, that would be fantastic. If we could take it a step further and start providing them with financial assistance, that would also be fantastic. So that's just me as Allison McSpadden and not as your local COC person. So who would like to be the next speaker?
Allison, can I speak? It's Maria.
Yes, ma'am, you go on
Thank you.
ahead.
Okay, I'd just like to thank you for that, and to say again that I think, I've worked with doubled up families for many years now, but it's different now for the students because of the
Hold on, I'm
COVID.
calling Danielle because I spoke before the council.
Because of COVID. I'm working with many kids and trying to do some after school literature, math stuff, but kids have fallen behind dramatically and are not really, they're losing a lot of time. Now we're going in and out of the classroom again. So I really feel a real sense of need now to house some of these doubled up families because of the kids. The kids are emotionally hurting and educationally behind. So, I think this is a good time to we haven't really been able to look at doubled up families too much. So I think this is a good time to entertain that thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next?
Hi, I just have a quick question, and I hope I didn't miss it. Could you please put, this is Maria speaking. Could you please put in the chat the email that was shown on the very first slide?
Yes, I
as to
can.
Where to put the submission, and also if you happen to have, if there is a contact person in case we have additional questions. Thank you.
The additional questions can also go to that email address, and that email will be sent to everyone who is with the planning team here today, and along with myself. So I will make sure that your message gets routed where it needs to go when it comes through. So it should be back on your screen now. The email address is homearp@programdesign.com. So again, you can, piggyback off of what you said. You could add additional ideas. You could come up with something completely new. And if you have any articles or other documentation that supports what you're saying, it would be really great to have that, because everything we receive in writing from folks is going to be added to the record that's submitted to HUD with each of our plans. So our notes from the meeting will be sent, our who all we invited, who all came, and the topics that everyone brought up and their ideas will all be shared with HUD. So even if the idea that you provided isn't an idea that is enacted at this juncture, HUD is still going to hear your voice that this is a need area, and that is going to become part of their data that they collect as they address future problems and issues that people experiencing homelessness are facing. Ken Jenkins, I see your hand is raised.
Hey, and thanks, Allison. Hey, just really quick. I mean, I did hear Mayor Sean Patterson. How good seeing you, Sean, on the question about the facilities that we have available in the county to help those that need to quarantine safely to do that. People were aware that we had a hotel earlier during the pandemic, which when it went down somewhere in September, October, we left that particular facility. We have another one. So for those hospitals, and they've been communicated with directly because they sent people to the DSS office that needed the shelter, which was not cool, right? But we were able to work with them and have a conversation when their social services entities need to place people in places where they can quarantine safely. There's a communication with DSS, and we take care of that placement. Troy DeCohen is the one that leads that particular effort. And so if you had a hospital as like Montefiore Mayor, they should communicate that back to the DSS, and we have a procedure to take that into consideration. It is a responsibility of the county health department specifically to deal with keeping quarantine folks in safe areas, whether they're in congregate care, in a facility or not in a facility.
Please. Okay. Quick question. I was the committee meeting last night. Was it your understanding?
Danielle, you're off mute. Put yourself on mute, Ms. Brown.
Got it.
Okay.
And then going forward, as we continue to work through those different definitions of identifying places, what I would like to ask all of your help in is, instead of saying to places like people feel they're not safe, I need to hear that DSS needs to hear that, we spend a lot of money in our facilities, and some of the leaders of those facilities are on the line right now, right? And they have done tremendous work in trying to ensure the safety of people, whether in a drop-in facility or in a residential facility, We have an entire floor for people that are in family situations that are isolated, needing to isolate. So there's a lot of work that continues to be done. But if you don't give us that feedback, telling us, someone making an assumption that they need to couch surf or they don't feel safe, it's that we have to hear that because we continue to work on those particular problems. So that's my ask to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes for a few more speakers. Oh, I see Ms. Marianne Watkins. Go on ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. And I just really wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Ken Jenkins was just saying, because I have a couple of my clients now that are literally in their cars because they're afraid for their life. Okay, they went to the shelters, they had their belongings stolen, they really experienced some traumatizing things. I actually had to place a consumer into housing because his defibrillator had been stolen 3 times from a Yonkers shelter, and he feared for his life. So yes, I would definitely like to share my story with Mr. Jenkins or whoever I need to send it to, because unfortunately it's a real issue that's happening throughout these shelters. So I definitely want to piggyback on that. And again, say that, and besides just the funding for, not just the funding for affordable, accessible housing for individuals with disabilities, but I would like to see somewhere down the line that there's a systemic change, because there's something really broke with the housing system where it's really affordable housing is almost unrealistic. And I think we need to just revamp it, and we need to look at a systemic change all the way around to address the homeless population, affordable, accessible housing, and all of those things that I would really love to be a part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. If you email me about your clients who are staying in vehicles or not staying in shelter because they're fearful, I will connect them to an outreach worker if you use the home ARP at programdesign.com. And if you would like me to forward that information to Mr. Jenkins and his offices, I can do that for you as well, all in one shot. Just send it to me, give me my marching orders, and I'll make sure that it happens.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, who would like to be our next speaker? Have we talked you guys out? I know a 90-minute Zoom is a long one for a lot of folks. Okay, Mr. Jenkins has put in the chat Troy DeCohen's name and telephone number for anyone who has identified a client who is fearful while staying in shelter or fearful to enter shelter. So it's 914-995-3017 or tqd9@westchestergov.com.
For myself, just for a point of clarity, I wanted to make sure, because I came on late, I wanted to make sure no one felt I'm not blaming any system. I'm just saying the system, we had it in place, it was no longer necessary, and then boom, overnight, everything happened again. So it's a system that we have to try and find a way to put back in place on an as needed basis, because this is gonna pop up and pop back on different ways. So we have to design it in a way in which it would be very, very flexible, and work with hotels that are not going to charge us exorbitant amounts, because, I used to be a front office manager in a hotel, and if it was government, they gave you higher rates than they would give you for people walking off the street. So we have to find a way to negotiate a rate. And I'll be happy to work on that with you because I worked in that industry for quite a while.
Thank you. Okay, how about our planning team? Would you like to mention anything that you would like to hear more about? Do you feel you got what you needed from today's session?
I would just, Alba Guevara from the City of Yonkers Department of Planning and Development. I would like to say that this is only the beginning. This only begins the process for us. It's only the consultation portion. We will be preparing an amendment to our annual action plan. We plan to begin that in the spring. We will have a public hearing around this topic. We will be having an additional 15-day comment period, and we hope to submit to HUD sometime in early summer of 2022. So just to say that we look forward to, thank you for your input today, and we look forward to additional emails with some of the data that you provided today. So thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sylvia Bolivar with the City of Mount Vernon. Thank you for your very thoughtful comments. Please, I encourage you to submit them in writing as well. So we will include those in our plan when we do submit our plan. We had initially in our 2021 annual action plan had indicated that we were considering using our home ARP funds for tenant-based rental assistance and having those funds available to place individuals and or households that may need this resource once the ESG CV grants expire in September. So that is something we're considering, along with all the comments that have been provided today. We have ESG CV funds that we had allocated for rapid rehousing, those who are unsheltered, and through our street outreach team, we have provided housing to. Youth homeless, we have a number of youth who are homeless in Mount Vernon who we have used these funds to allocate for rental assistance under the homeless prevention program. And we also have allocated funds for domestic violence rapid rehousing and domestic violence homeless prevention. So approximately 30 to 40 individuals, we may look at using these funds to provide additional rental assistance past September. Again, that was the initial thought, but we welcome all of the recommendations that you have. In addition, we will look to do a public hearing in the next 2 or 3 months and put out a draft plan once we have a public hearing and put that out for public comment. So our goal is to submit our plan by May, June, around that time frame.
Pam Tarlow with Westchester County. Our plan is pretty similar to have that plan ready to go hopefully this spring, early summer. There will be another 30-day comment period once we have developed the what we call an action plan, which is an amendment to the consolidated plan that we've done. That will be available to everyone to view. We'll have listed projects. That's how we generally do it. We do it project-based. So what'll happen is those projects that I'm sort of thinking about and hopefully will go to my commissioner, who will have some, thank you, who will have, some feedback and some ideas. We'll talk to Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Latimer, and hopefully we'll put something together that meets a lot of the things that you've been talking about here. Some of your ideas were really wonderful, and I don't really think we're on my radar, and I may be able to use other funding sources. I have to do a little research, but there may be other funding sources that can be used for some things. So I'm excited about maybe being able to do that. So thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And keep paying attention on the county website, because you will be seeing a comments period. There will be more opportunities to discuss these projects as we lay them out.
I guess I will conclude and keep it quick. I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining today and for all the work that everybody does on this call. You guys are amazing people, and you make our jobs, very fulfilling, and we're glad that we're going to be able to help a lot of you. And I just, I share the same sentiment as Pam. We're going to take all of these considerations back to our, our commissioner and our deputy, and we'll talk about them. And our hope is to have, something out there, this spring, summer timeframe as well. So again, thank you. And thank you to the COC for helping to organize all of this.
It is our pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope this was beneficial to everyone. Certainly glad that we didn't have to do 4 of these, so everybody could be heard together on the things that matter and impact all of us and our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. So this session will be available as a recording on our YouTube channel. And you can get to that. We don't have a personalized URL yet because we don't have enough subscribers. So if you would like and share our video, we will be able to have our own titled YouTube channel. But for now, you can find it at tinyurl.com/WCOC YouTube. And it will take you there. All of our public meetings that we've had in the past couple of years are there. There are also a number of training videos if you're interested in learning how we do what we do with the information that we get as we direct people toward housing. So thank you very much. Take care out there. It's a cold one. If you see anyone out and about who you believe to be homeless, please do use that homearpprogramdesign.com email to let me know about them so we can connect them to outreach right away. Thanks, everyone. Take care.